There is no place in this world for mum guilt, or mum guilt as I term it. And yeah, let me tell you, the quicker you can eradicate any hint of mum guilt from your life, the better off you're going to be for it. Trust me, I know you'll probably sit there thinking, oh, it's all right for her to say, but I'm one of them people that suffered really, really badly, especially when my kids were younger, from terrible mum guilt. And eventually, over time, I just realised it is not contributing anything positive in my life whatsoever. So why do I give it the airspace? And I can tell you about the moment that I kind of had that turning point in my life that made me sit up and realise, why am I doing this to myself, okay? So remember, if I look back way before the pandemic, back then I used to fly out to America every 3 or 4 weeks, which I know seems crazy if I look back now, but I used to fly out there. I used to go and do a big US TV show. I used to take the 6 a.m. flight on a Sunday morning, and I used to fly Newcastle to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Atlanta, Atlanta into Tampa. It was an 18-hour door-to-door journey, and I used to leave the house at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, we were in our little routine, so on the Saturday night, I would put the kids to bed. It would be really sad that I was going away tomorrow, but we could talk about it. You know, Mummy's got to go and work for a couple of days, and I'll be back home on Thursday, and it's all okay. And, you know, they'd be a little bit on a downer, but at least we were talking about it, and I was going to bed with them, and I was cuddling them off, and they'd just wake up the next morning, knowing fine well that I wasn't going to be there, and they kind of coped with that. And I remember this one time, Delta introduced a direct flight from Amsterdam to Tampa, which meant that instead of getting the 6 o'clock hopper from Newcastle, I had to get the 9:30 hopper, which meant I didn't leave the house till 7 o'clock on the Sunday morning, and the kids were up. Now, let me tell you, it was so much more difficult leaving the house at 7 o'clock on the Sunday morning when the kids were awake than it was leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning when they're fast asleep. And they were at that age where they were clinging onto my leg. Don't go, Mummy. We don't want you to go. Why do you have to go? And I'm trying to explain, you know, Mummy has to go and earn the pennies. We don't want pennies. We don't want any pennies. We just want our Mummy. And it was the most awful thing that I had to deal with. And I got in that car and I cried all the way to the airport. And I felt absolutely terrible. And I remember getting on the plane and feeling so sorry for myself. I was wallowing in self-pity. I was FaceTiming them when I got to Amsterdam. I was sitting looking through photos of the kids. Now, here's the bit I didn't tell you. I used to do this trip once a month. And I know that I used to fly out there to do a big TV show on the big shopping channel I work with out there. And to go and do the big TV show was around about 10 hours of prep time for me. And what I used to do is I used to do that prep while I was on the aeroplane. So instead of taking any more of my time when I should have been with the family, I used to do all my prep work on the aeroplane because it was an 18-hour journey. I had the time. And of course, this one day, I got on the plane. I felt so sorry for myself. The last thing I wanted to do was get my laptop and my notebook out and start doing all of my prep work. So actually, I got on the long haul flight, still feeling sorry for myself, still really upset. I ended up sitting watching a couple of, you know, rom-com movies to try and cheer myself, looking through pictures of the kids. And what happened was, I ended up landing in Tampa that night and getting to the hotel at like 7, 8 o'clock on the evening, having not done my prep work for the TV show, which meant that I had to stay up until the early hours of the morning when I was already exhausted and jet-lagged doing my prep work, which meant instead of 10 hours, I tried to condense it into 3 or 4 hours, and consequently, I didn't do a very good job of it. Knock-on effect of that means I didn't do a very good job of my job the next day. You know, I presented the TV shows, but I know that wasn't the best I could have done because I wasn't as thoroughly prepared. I'm one of them people that I like to have prepared for every eventuality, and I know to do a brilliant job in that moment, it's all about the hours and hours of preparation. So consequently, I went on air, and in my eyes, didn't do a good enough job of being on air. So what happened? Felt rubbish about myself, because now I was telling myself I was a terrible mum who was going and leaving these poor kids at home, and now I was a terrible businesswoman who was letting my company down, letting my staff down because I hadn't done a very good job of my job. So I got on the aeroplane to come home, felt like utter rubbish. And I remember getting back home and landing back on the Thursday and just feeling like my life was a complete and utter failure because I was failing as a mother, failing as a businesswoman. It was all a disaster, right? All of that came from letting that mum guilt seep in, because the reality of the situation, I'm sure when my husband told me, by the time I got to the airport, Kids didn't really care that I'd gone. They were having a great day with their dad, going to Nana and Grandad's for Sunday dinner that day. You know, everything they'd normally do on the Sunday that I was away in America every month. So here's me, I let it have a knock-on effect and essentially ruin my whole week by letting that mum guilt creep in. However, my kids were no better or worse off. I know realistically deep down, those kids have a great life. I'm a fantastic mother. I do brilliant stuff with them. I might not spend as much time with them as other mothers get to, but I make the time that I do spend with them absolutely count. And at the same time, I know I'm a great business person. Again, I try and have a balance between the business and being a mum, but I know that I do both well. And I think the key thing is always focusing on what you do well and never letting mum guilt creep in, because it doesn't serve anyone. I can tell you, I've never taken that 9:30 flight again. I've never given myself the opportunity to let mum guilt take over. I've really focused on, I am a great mother. This is what I've done and I've done it well. And let's not focus on the negatives. Let's focus on the positive.